Howdy Hive Scum and welcome back. Finally, some Necromunda news. There's been a bit of a drought on the Necromunda front lately. Not only in my own content has been reflecting that because we've just not had anything out for a while. We did get a little small something though, and it's worth talking about that today. We have a new Apocrypha Necromunda article that you can go and download for free off the Warhammer community website. Now this one's a bit of a fun one. It's titled Wheels of Fury and it's all about underhive racing. In my opinion, the Apocrypha Necromunda free download series is excellent support from Games Workshop, and if you don't have all of these already, some of them offer some great ways to expand your games of Necromunda. This one in particular involves vehicles, and it's basically pod racing in the Underhive or the Ash Wastes, which is flipping awesome. They've made some really cool mechanics here. We're just going to go through those today. Now, with any of these Apocrypha Necromunda articles, they are, of course, optional rules. You don't have to use them. You can twist them and change them and house rule them a little bit as well in your own groups to see how you like them best. But the fact that Games Workshop has been supplying these for free for quite a while now is just awesome. So if you don't own all these already, make sure you check out the archives on the Warhammer community website and download all of these PDFs because they are free and loads of them are really, really good. Now, every one of these Apocrypha Necromunda articles comes with a little bit of lore. We're not going to discuss that today, though. We're going to go straight to the meat and potatoes, which is, of course, the rules and mechanics for Underhive racing. First up, we're going to be creating an Underhive racer. Now, it does specifically say Underhive racing, so you can do multiple different types of terrain in this, but we're going to get into that a bit later. But this is for multiple different types of terrain, not just Ash Waste, so you can play all this in dense terrain as well. But again, we'll talk about that a bit later. First off, though, creating an Underhive racer, or a pod racer, if you want to call it that. Players have 400 credits to create their own custom-built vehicle. They must use the custom medium vehicle, so not the light vehicle or the heavy vehicle, although you totally can do that, and there is a designer's note next to it saying that you can use light vehicles. However, if you want to use light vehicles, you only get 250 credits, and if you use heavy vehicles, you get 600 credits. So just adjust accordingly depending on what you want to do. Personally, though, I do think the medium is probably the best way to go for all-around racing, although light would be pretty fun too because they're just super fast. Any crew may be chosen here as well, with the exception of Corpse Grinder Cults and Guild of Coin Haulier and Palanite Rangers as well, which is a bit weird that they exclude those ones. Maybe it's just for the lore. I'm not really sure why the exclusion there on those three different crew types, but it is what it is. Again, though, I'm sure you'll go and just do it yourself and just include those guys if you want. I can't see anything wrong with it, really. Any vehicle upgrades up to and including Rare 10 can be purchased during creation without the need to visit the trading post as well. So you can have anything provided you don't spend over that 400 credits. Racers are usually crafted with loving care by their owners, and despite being custom vehicles, do not have the jury-rigged special rule as well. So they're a bit more reliable in that too. That does say underneath this that players do not need to spend all of their credits when creating a racer, though any unspent credits are lost. The cost of the racers does come into this a little bit later on as well, but we'll discuss that in a bit. So once you've got your custom vehicle built for your racing, be it a wheeled, tracked, or even a hover vehicle as well, you then go into setting up your track. So with the racers created, the next step is setting up the track they will race on. Typically, this job is the arbitrator's job as well, though players may generate the track randomly using the Underhive racetrack tables on page 6 that we'll get to in a bit. Each track consists of 3 track sections, numbered 1 to 3, each measuring 4 foot by 2 foot. The action of the race will only ever be taking place on one of these sections at a time, so the play area of 4 by 2 is fine for most races. Each section will have its own rules and terrain guidelines as detailed on the Underhive race track tables, and at the start of the game, set up the track section number 1 following these guidelines. During the race, when at least half of the racers have left the track, we'll talk about that in a minute, the current round ends and the track section is changed to the next section in the sequence, i.e. 1 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 3, or 2 become 1 if you're a fan of the Spice Girls. When a track section is changed, you remove all the racers and the terrain, and then you set it up according to the table that we're going to look at in a bit. Once the terrain is set up, you then place the racers as detailed in the leaders and stragglers bit, and this is where it gets really fun. Leaving the track is pretty simple. You start at one end, the start line, and you try to get to the other side, the short edge, by the way, and that is the goal basically. So that's the finishing line of that particular track. In effect, you move them down the battlefield from one short edge to the opposite short edge. Racers may not voluntarily leave the battlefield, with the exception of the short edge designated as the finish line. The next thing, and this is a big thing here, is how the actual thing plays out in terms of leaders and stragglers. So when a racer moves off the track via the finish line and there are still other racers on the track, they become a leader. Place the racer to one side, and each subsequent turn that there are still racers on the track, place a token next to the leader. Now, when the track is changed, any racers still on the track become stragglers. So there's leaders and stragglers. After terrain has been set up for the next track section, stragglers are placed starting with those who were the closest to the finish line when the track was changed. Leaders are then placed next, starting with the racer with the most tokens. For each token that you have, you can be placed 6 inches from the starting zone up to a maximum of 24 inches. In both cases, if a leader or straggler would be placed at the same time, roll off to see who is placed first. So depending on how much of a leader you are, you get a head start into the next track section. If you're a straggler, you get no bonus whatsoever. In terms of the different race track types you've got here on the table, you roll a D3 here, and you've got the first one is a 1, and you have dense terrain and impassable sides, so you can't go through the sides at all at any point, and the terrain is really, really dense. I love the idea of zooming around really dense terrain in this, all sorts of mayhem and carnage in that. On a 2, you get light terrain, and you get cliffs on the sides as well, which is pretty cool. And on 3, you get completely open, i.e. sort of ash wastes really, and open edges as well. So you can actually go off the edges and enter back onto the track. In terms of the density of terrain here, there is a sort of outline. So dense basically means 3 pieces of terrain or 3 terrain elements per foot square. On the open section, you only have 1 piece of terrain on each of those squares as well. When you roll that 3 and you have the sides open, if you do move off the sides, you become a straggler. You've then got some really cool special rules that we're going to go through now. There is a table here, and it's a 2d6 table, and you roll this to sort out which special rules you get in the race as well. And this is per section of the track. So every time you move on to a new section, you roll on this 2d6 table here. On a 2, it's flooded, so the movement characteristic for all tracked and wheeled vehicles becomes 2 inches less. Wheeled and tracked vehicles cannot be subject to the blaze condition and lose the blaze condition if they already have it. That's on a 2. On a 3, you get pitch black, so the visibility rule is then 3 inches, which is pretty tough. On a 4, you get ventilation processor. When the track section is set up, randomly determine one of the long battlefield edges. In the end phase of each round, all racers are moved 1 inch directly towards this edge, unless they are skimmers, in which case they are moved 3 inches towards the edge. So a little bit of a buff for the others and a bit of a neg on the skimmers there. Note that racers can be moved off the track in this way as well, so you can become a straggler without really knowing about it. But I love this. You get pulled towards one side. Fantastic. On a 5, you get falling debris. So if a racer comes into contact with a piece of terrain after working out the effects of the collision, roll a d6. On a 5 or 6, each player in order of priority places a 5-inch blast marker anywhere on the battlefield and scatters it 2d6. After determining its final position, any racers under the marker are hit by a strength 8, AP nothing, damage 3 hit. So pretty nasty, that one. Pretty cool though. You just explode into a shower of debris, which is awesome. The next one is Gunk Slick. This one's going to be interesting. When the track section is set up, each player, in an order determined by rolling off, places a Gunk Slick marker anywhere on the battlefield at least 12 inches from the short edge and 9 inches from an already deployed Gunk Slick marker. If a racer comes into contact or within 6 inches of one of these markers, it must make a loss of control test. So slippery, slidey, gunk everywhere. On a 7, you get underhive gloom, so the visibility is d6 times 6 in the rules in effect. So roll to determine the value of the visibility roll during the priority phase of each round. So it's variable, Pretty cool. On an 8, you get rats. Each time the racer ends its activation on this track section, place a rat counter next to them. Rat counters have the following cumulative effects. 1 to 2 rat counters, you are -1 on all your shooting attacks. 3 to 4, you got to re-roll successful handling checks. And on a 5+, if there are 5 or more rat counters, when the racer activates, it suffers a strength 6, strength 3, AP nothing, damage 1 hit, and all rat counters are lost when a vehicle leaves this track section. On a 9, we have toxic sludge. So at the end of their activation, if a racer has moved less than 6 inches during their activation, they suffer a strength 3, AP nothing, damage 1 hit, as if by a weapon from Blaze. Nasty. On a 10, we have mines. This one sounds really fun. When this track section is set up, each player, in order determined by rolling off, places a mine marker anywhere on the battlefield at least 12 inches from its short edge. If a racer comes into contact with one of these markers, it immediately explodes. Count this as a demolition charge centered on the racer and then remove the marker. If the vehicle is still able, they can complete their activation. On an 11, we have auto turrets. So if a racer ends its activation within 6 inches of a long battlefield edge, it will suffer D6, strength 4, AP nothing. Sorry, AP -1, damage 1 hits as well. And on a 12, we have Inferno. The track is on fire. At the end of each racer's activation, roll a D6. On a 5 or 6, it catches fire and becomes subject to the blaze condition. And that is for the entire track section. So you've got your custom racer built, you've got your track section sorted. The next thing you need to do is start the actual game. So you start by setting up the first track section as detailed before. Then each player takes it in turn to place their racer touching the short battlefield edge of the starting zone. So this is the start line, starting with the player whose racer has the lowest credit value. So this is quite interesting. If you choose not to spend all of your creds on guns and other gear, then you will get to start first. And I think priority is quite important in this, really, but the cheapest racer goes first, really. If more than one racer has the same credit value, you roll off to see who places first. Racers cannot be placed within 1 inch of an already placed racer. Once all the racers are placed, the race can begin. So each player then rolls for priority as normal. The player who has the lowest credit value adding 1 to the result of the dice roll. So you get to place your fighter first if you're cheapest, but you also get to add 1 to the dice roll for priority as well. We then have some special rules which alter the way that vehicles work a little bit for the racing here. Firstly, we have racers must always use at least 1 action to move and must always move the maximum distance allowed when performing this action. Vehicles cannot become broken or stationary. If they would be subject to either of these conditions, they instead lose a hull point. All terrain that is not counted as difficult counts as flimsy as well, and vehicles cannot stop at all in an underhive race. So you can't voluntarily stop at all. Now, how does it end? The race ends if at the start of a round there are no racers on the current racetrack section. The winner will be the racer that moved off the finish line first, of course. If the race was part of an underhive racing campaign, then there may be additional rewards for coming in second and third place, as detailed in a bit. If the race finishes before the final track section is completed, each racer that has not been taken out of action is considered to have completed the race. Pretty cool. So that's the fundamentals of how hive racing works, and honestly I'm really looking forward to trying this out. I don't actually have any sort of custom vehicles at the moment, but I would love to get some built together and maybe do a little battle report on this. However, we then have the inclusion of underhive racing campaigns in here as well, so you could do just a purely racing campaign here on the side of your regular campaign, or just this on its own. It would be pretty fun. It's something you could get done in a weekend with your mates, have some beers and some pretzels and whatnot. I think this would be a lot of fun. All you got to do is keep track of your own racer while the arbitrator sort of manages things in terms of the tracks and things like that and when games are played. You get some credits and rewards as well in terms of the campaign, or using it as a campaign scenario as well. If you took part in the race, you get 25 credits and D6 experience for the driver. If you're first place, you get 100 credits and 10 experience, which is excellent. Second place, 75 credits and 7 experience. Third place, 50 credits and 5 experience. If you completed the race, not just took part, you get D6 times 10 credits and 3 experience. And each racer that you took out of action, you get 50 credits for and 5 experience as well. So there's quite a lot of money in this, to be honest, which is good. And I can see this being a really fun addition to your campaigns. In downtime between these games as well, you can spend money that you earn by improving your races as well. Again, going up to legality and rarity of 10 as well. And you can do this without actually doing any post-battle actions, on paper. You basically just spend the money that you've accumulated on upgrades and things up to that rarity of 10. There's also some rules for racing with wrecked vehicles as well here. So at the start of each race, immediately roll on the lasting damages table and apply the results, re-rolling the results if unreliable. If a vehicle with the wreck condition is wrecked again, do not roll on the lasting damages table. Instead, it is completely destroyed and you have to reset with a new racer. So that's it, guys. A really simple and really effective and quite clever way of bringing racing into your underhive campaigns, and even just doing this as one-off sort of skirmish games as well. I can see this being a lot of fun. I really like the idea used on the track sections and how you lay out the terrain and stuff. I particularly am into the idea of racing and using vehicles on dense terrain, as well as sort of like going off the edges and all the other sort of variables in here. It's relatively simple and it's really well done. So hats off to Games Workshop for whoever did this, because I think it's been quite well thought out. And I'm really looking forward to using this at some point. I'd love to know what you think though. Have you read through this? What kind of vehicle are you going to go with here? Do you think the medium vehicles is the best sort of go, or would you perhaps go with light or even heavy vehicles as well? I think this is going to be really fun. So I'd like to know what you think down below, and if you've even done this already, because this has been out a few days now. I'm sure some of you eager beavers have already had a game or two of this, so do let me know in the comments what you think. And it's been nice to get back to making some Necromunda content. Hopefully we'll have some more out soon. In the meantime though, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you real soon. Peace out.